You know what nobody tells you when you marry a physician? Any guesses?
It's hard.
That the hardest part isn't the residency, it isn't the overnight calls or the missed dinners
That's true.
or the years of living on basically nothing. The hardest part is what happens after all of that, when the life you were promised finally arrives and it still doesn't feel like enough, and you're standing there wondering if something is wrong with you, or wrong with your marriage, or wrong with both. That's what we're talking about today. Welcome back to Supporting Physician Spouses. I am your host, Kendra Harvey. And if you caught our last episode, then you already know that this conversation has been building for a while. The responses I got from both of those told me one thing loud and clear: you are not done talking about this, and honestly, neither am I. So today, I brought in the person I talk about all of this with anyway, my husband, Adrian Harvey. He is a neurosurgeon, father of 5, and the man who sat across from me at dinner the other night and helped me map out this entire episode on basically a 3x5 card. So, Adrian, welcome to the podcast.
Glad to be here.
So, we've been married for 22 years, and I will tell everyone right now that we didn't always get this right. And we're going to talk about that today, too. So, here's why this episode exists. After episode 47 and after the TextMed conference, I keep hearing the same thing. People say, I thought it was just us, or I didn't realize how much we had drifted. And that told me that we needed to go a little bit deeper, because naming something is a start, but it isn't enough. And what I keep coming back to, and what Adrian and I keep coming back to when we talk about this, is that most couples in medicine are not in crisis. They're not on the edge of divorce. They're just waiting for the schedule to settle, waiting for the kids to get older, waiting for things to naturally get better on their own. Waiting isn't really a strategy. It's never been a strategy. And in physician marriages where the demands on your time and your energy and your attention are genuinely extraordinary, hoping that things are just going to sort themselves out is one of the most expensive bets you can make. So we're going to talk about what it actually costs, and we're going to talk about what to do instead. Does that sound good?
Sounds great.
All right. So, Adrian, I want to start here because I think it's the thing that doesn't get said enough. When people talk about physician divorce, the conversation almost always goes straight to infidelity. And yes, we know that happens, but we also know that's not the whole story, not even close. When you think about the people that you know in medicine, what are you hearing from colleagues?
I think it varies. The extreme was sort of a funny episode. When I first started, I was in the locker room or the lounge, and there was one of the docs that I work with, and he, half serious, half joking, just said, hey, you ought to get ready for divorce, because it can be really expensive when you have to pay alimony. 5 kids. It kind of shook me a little bit. I came home and told you about it, and, kind of funny, but it just kind of threw me for a loop. I have other colleagues that I have one recently that was divorced, and I rarely hear about the infidelity, believe it or not. I think there's other reasons that are longer lasting and more pervasive in marriage that can cause issues.
Yeah, I think the truth is most physician marriages don't end because someone did something unforgivable. They end because 2 people got very good at functioning in parallel. They're efficient, they're capable, yet completely disconnected. And then one day one of them looks up and realizes that they've been living with a roommate for years, and that's no longer appealing. So let's talk about how that actually happens, because I think we contributed to it also in our own marriage. So Adrian, what do you think we could have done better during medical school and residency specifically? I know this is
huge. It's so, hindsight's 2020. I think if I could give myself advice going back however many years, I would have said a couple of things. I think the number one is to recognize that it is difficult, that a medical marriage there's more strain on that marriage than a lot of other types of marriages or other careers. And so to be proactive about marriage and sitting down with your spouse and saying, listen, I know this is going to be difficult for however many years.
For eternity?
Until I retire or whatever. But let's make this something, let's work together and make it a goal that we come out of this as strong or stronger in our marriage, romance, teamwork, cooperation, childbearing, raising, and contribution to society. I think if I would have had that mindset, it would have changed a lot of things. I think that would have started with communication, that we sit down, talk about that, try to identify what are the hard things. Luckily, we have podcasts and things like this that can tell you before you even start where you might see snags and problems and anticipate those. I think it would have been huge for me to say, what is going to be difficult here? Or even a little bit into it. Hey, what is difficult for you right now? What are you struggling with? What are your emotions? How do you feel? And just talk regularly about the situations and what's going on and how are you feeling, and be very, very honest. So communication, exit vision is the first, right? Just saying, hey, we're going to be proactive about this. Communication is part of that. I think we could have been more creative in sharing time together. And then I think the other thing is just, I think we've talked about it before, is the fair play type principle of recognizing that there is a list of things that need to be done in a married couple and then as a family, and trying to do my best to do what I can with that. Those are the biggies, I think, right now.
I think I shared with you the other day, and I think we were naive in this too, especially during medical school and early residency, thinking that this was a short period of time.
Yeah.
Like, we fell into that this is just temporary without realizing that we were establishing patterns that were going to make it really hard for that to remain temporary without some type of intervention. And that's great if some people can do that and make it temporary, and those habits that they develop don't follow them. That's amazing, but that's also very rare. So if I were going to answer that question about what do I think we could have done better in medical school and residency, in addition to adding to what you said, and I should probably also add, we did not do a good job about any of that. We did not have a vision. It was just survive, not be a vision. Let's just get from here to where we know we're going to be, and then that will work itself out. So we didn't do that very well. Communicating, we didn't do very well. There were lots of things we didn't. I'm sure we're going to talk about more of those. For me, I think the honest answer is that I was so focused on surviving that I stopped thinking about us and managing the kids, having kids, young kids during a really difficult time, thinking about all the things that we need to do, like the emotional atmosphere of our home. And for me, I told myself that that was enough, like holding it together and surviving was enough because it was going to be temporary and that was going to be my contribution. And so I wasn't going to tell you everything that I needed or everything that I was feeling. It was like, we'll just take care of that later. Also, very bad strategy. So I think a lot of women in this community know exactly what I'm talking about. So I want to get into some of the research and some of the strategies that are out there for physician couples, because there is actually really good information available, and Adrienne and I have some thoughts on those. So I'm going to start with this quote, and this is my absolute all-time favorite quote, and it is from Wayne Sotile. He is a PhD. He works specifically, he's spent decades dedicating his career to helping physicians and their families live happy and fulfilling lives. And in the introduction to his book, The Medical Marriage, it's either in the introduction or the first chapter, but it's in the first couple of pages. He says this, and I think for any physician family, if you can make this kind of your mantra, it's really long, so it can't really be a mantra, but your vision or your goal or something to be thinking about as you plan your life, it will do you immense good. So this is the quote. He says, "You gained your station and status in life by doing more than other people. You studied more, you worked more, you sacrificed more, and you endured more. If you want to escape becoming one of those couples who are living together in semi-misery, enduring rather than enjoying their lives and each other, you'll have to do more for your marriage than they do for theirs." And here's what hits me about that is the capacity is already there. Physicians are not lazy people. They are some of the most disciplined, hardworking, high-functioning humans on the planet. The question is never whether they can do hard things. The question is whether they're willing to apply that same energy and intention to their marriage. And a lot of times, that is where I see that it breaks down. There's also some research I want to talk about that says that couples need around 90 minutes of connection each day to actually improve their satisfaction with life and with their relationship. And I know the first thing that comes to mind for all of us is that how are we going to find 90 minutes? Like, I don't have 90 minutes. I'm trying to think, like the other day, you were on call, you came home late. I had a church meeting that I was at. You beat me home. I got home at 10 o'clock and we hadn't seen each other all day. It's like, okay, well, that day, obviously 90 minutes going to happen. But what's your response to 90 minutes of connection?
Yeah, I do the same thing and kind of laugh. I think I just did that actually a few minutes ago when you said that. Depends on how you qualify 90 minutes. But yeah, I don't think that's our number. Yeah.
But I like it as a kind of a goal to shoot for.
Sure.
And it doesn't have to be 90 minutes all at one time. And so I think during the day, if you think about all of your points of contact and you were to add all of those up, would you have 90 minutes over the course of a day?
Well, and I think you can make choices too. Like commonly I'll be sitting in bed and reading something, but then you come and you're getting ready for bed, washing your face, things like that. I make the choice to get up out of bed and stand next to you and talk to you while you do that, just because that might be part of that 90 minutes and it's time that we can just talk about the day.
Yeah, all of those little tiny moments of connection do add up. And I think as close as you can get to 90 minutes, and even if it's just 90 minutes average over. So in the course of a week, maybe you'll have a date night and maybe that'll be 4 hours. And then Monday through Friday, maybe it's only 45 minutes. And then on Sunday, you make up the difference for the rest. But if you can average 90 minutes, then I can see that that's definitely doable. But on any specific day, 90 minutes might be
weekends.
Yeah. But at the same time, you don't want to just reserve your weekends just for that. But sometimes that's what it is. Mm-hmm. All right. So we're going to talk about a framework that we're going to walk through that it has some really practical pieces, and it is called a success plan. And the core idea is helping couples move from functioning as two efficient individuals, which we are, to actually operating as a unified team, because those are not the same thing. And we know that firsthand. So some of what's in there we already do, and some of it we've tried and adapted. And some of it honestly sounds great on paper, and it's a little bit harder in real life. So let's go through it together and we'll talk. But all of you are doing this great. All right. Shared calendar.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. I think we discovered that a few years ago, that we just have to know what's happening and what's going on in my work, everything else, yours, the kids. And I think that allows for both of us to look and say, oh, I can help with this. I can do this. I can.
Yeah. But would you say we have a shared calendar?
I know where your calendar is.
Do you look at it?
I do. I look at it. It's my iPad.
Oh.
Yeah, so I can see what's going
on. I don't have your calendar.
Mine needs to be work for the most part.
Probably. Okay. How about, and this one may have applied when our kids were younger, but setting a real bedtime for the kids so that you have time together at the end of a long day.
Yeah, I think we actually were fairly good at that when the kids were younger.
We were excellent at it. I think, I remember when you're in that period of time, bedtime and nap times are sacrosanct. Like, you protect those at all costs. And we did. I think our kids, like even our oldest, when he went to kindergarten, he was still napping up until kindergarten. And that was amazing. But yeah, our kids always went to bed early. Now we're in a different stage of life. We have 2 adult children who are in college. They're home for the summer. We've got another daughter who's graduating high school next
3 weeks.
Yeah, soon. And then we have a freshman in high school and a 4th grader. And so we've noticed now we aren't paying attention to the older kids' bedtime. It's like, do what you got to do, but we're going to bed. And we still have to sometimes remember to put our 4th grader to bed. So for that one, we don't necessarily do that.
Yeah, I do try to ask too, like, hey, what's going on? And more out of curiosity, but also just so that I know what's happening.
Okay. The next one is a monthly budget conversation. So one person isn't always the one carrying the financial mental load.
Yeah, that's huge. So don't feel bad that I take care of everything. Just kidding. No, Kendra has always carried the load on that one, and it's only been more recently. Like, yeah, I got to be part of this and be responsible. And so huge, because I think there's a lot of tension that can come from that. and a lot of resentment maybe, and a lot of misunderstanding as to, well, I work hard, I want to do this. And the other person that happens to manage the money is like, great, thanks for working hard, but it doesn't matter. The money is not unlimited and we need to budget and do certain things.
Yeah, I think I shared this story earlier in another episode, but when we were in residency and money was really tight and you'd come home and bring me flowers, it was like it was this beautiful gesture. And there was this tension between wanting to be grateful because it was a beautiful, thoughtful, generous gift, and the tension of, now I got to go find $50, $75 in our budget that is already stretched thin. And so we've made a lot of progress. Our last meeting with our financial planner, I did not attend. He went on his own, and that hasn't happened before. Yeah, progress. Okay. So we're going to maybe get a little uncomfortable. There's some that I'm going to address directly because I think they make people a little uncomfortable, but scheduled intimacy.
Yeah. Tonight's fine.
Nice.
That's great.
What do you think of the idea of literally putting it on a calendar? I know it doesn't sound romantic, but...
Well, no, but I mean, in the more pragmatic sense, I think it's great because, especially with multiple kids, two dogs that seem to want to share the bedroom and everything else, there's a lot of distraction, there's a lot of fatigue, and there's just a lot of reason to just think, I'm just too tired. And so, no, I think it's a great idea and something to anticipate and look forward to. And it'd be great if you're spontaneous and a young couple and you can do whatever you want to do whenever you want to, but that just doesn't work. And so, yeah, it's scheduled either day nights or we have staycations or vacation.
I don't think that's what it's implying. I think it's talking about real, like physical intimacy, like scheduling that.
Oh, no, that's me. But I think that's what leads to it is you have to have the right situation, the right milieu, right? Before that's even going to happen. And 9:30, 10 o'clock at night when you can hear the kids watching Star Wars out and, cooking food, it's just not a very coercive environment for sure. For me, it's easy to turn the light on, but I understand.
So, do we schedule intimacy?
No. But I think we schedule time away.
Yeah.
Which generally leads to that.
Okay. All right. Oh, this is a good one. How about, there's something that's called the first to know rule, and maybe we do this and don't even know it, but the idea is that your spouse should be the first person who hears important news.
Yeah.
Not your colleague, not your best friend, not your partner, not your parent, because that matters. It's the small things that signal something really significant about where your relationship sits in your priority. So I don't know that we've ever said we're going to follow the first to know rule, but in general, I think we do.
Oh, absolutely. I remember a few years ago when I was on a train ride in the middle of nowhere in Colorado with my father, and my practice manager called me and said, hey, guess what? You're going to be paid for call. And I was giddy almost because the first thing I did is, hey, sorry, my son and my father, they're eating cheeseburgers and wherever in Colorado. I said, I got to go make a call in college, and said, hey, guess what? And I think we do that.
That kind of news is always good.
Yeah.
You don't want to keep it to yourself.
Yeah.
All right. So if you're listening to this and you're somewhere in the middle of it right now, maybe you're in residency, maybe you've been in attending life for a few years and something still feels off, we're going to talk directly to that for a moment, because I think the thing Adrienne and I come back to more than anything else is this, that intention matters. And even going back to that quote that we started off with, if you aren't intentional, you're going to end up in a life that is enduring rather than enjoying. And I think none of us hopped on this train just so we could endure. We were looking for a meaningful and fulfilling life, and that requires a lot of intention, more intention than you probably anticipated. Your marriage will not improve by accident. It just won't. And in physician marriages, especially, where the default is always going to pull you towards medicine, towards the schedule, towards the next thing that needs managing, if you're not actively and deliberately choosing your relationship, you are slowly choosing against it, even if that's not what you mean to do. So I know you kind of answered this question earlier, but maybe you could reframe it a little bit. So if you could go back and tell yourself one thing, I'm going to restrain you to just one thing, what would it be?
I think the principle of being proactive. Again, not just riding along. I like to swim on the beach and surf and stuff. And it's always, to me, it's like a water analogy or snow or whatever. But you're just kind of riding along with the wave and letting the waves push you along, like you said, in a marriage, that you just expect things to get better versus reactive when the wave hits you in the face. It's like, oh, this is what I should do versus, hey, why don't you get a nice boat or at least a surfboard or something to stay above the waves? Bit of an analogy there, but I think that it's proactively, hey, what can we do to make ourselves stronger, put ourselves as the priority over anything? And man, you could spend a lot of time on that, but I love that quote. I love that quote by Dr. Sotile is, you've got the smarts to do what you do. You can certainly use the smarts to improve your marriage. And that may even mean, I don't know how to do this, but call someone who knows, who can help you. And man, is it worth it?
Yeah, I think for me, it would be to stop waiting for the hard part to be over before you start investing in your marriage, because there's always going to be another hard part. Residency ends and then you're in fellowship or you're building a practice. The kids get older and then they have their own needs and their own crises. The schedule never really settles, especially depending on specialty. And if you've been telling yourself that you're going to focus on your relationship when things calm down, that day's probably not coming the way that you think it is. What comes instead is a choice to be proactive rather than reactive, to decide together that your marriage is something that you tend to now, not someday when you think it gets easier, but to do it right now. And I know that that can feel like one more thing on an already impossible list with lots of demands for your time. I really do. But we also know what it costs to wait. We've lived some of that cost, and it's not something that I would wish for anybody. The couples who make it, and I mean really make it, not just stay together, but actually like each other and like their lives, they are not the ones who got lucky. They are the ones who got intentional. Adrian, thank you so much for doing this with me. I'm not sure if you're someone who likes to be on the podcast or not.
Ooh, I do. I really do. I think if I can sit down with every medical student, resident, or intern resident attending and just say, hey, you may have figured this out way earlier than I did. Great. Congratulations. But if not, hey, listen, remember why you married that person. What was it about it? And what do you want? And what are your priorities? What do you want to do? And how do you want to come out of this at each stage? And just remember that it is doable and worth it. And there's hope and good things ahead.
Excellent. To everyone listening, thank you for being here. Thank you for trusting us with this conversation. I know it's not always easy to sit with, and I want you to know that if any part of what we've talked about today landed for you, that there is something waiting for you in the show notes. I put together a one-page document with all of the strategies we talked through in this episode, plus some others. There's 12 in total, all taken from the literature on physician marriages. They are practical ones. They're the ones you can actually take back to your own marriage and start using today. Go grab it in the show notes. And if this episode meant something to you, I've got 3 small asks. You could follow the podcast so you never miss an episode, and then share this with a friend who needs to hear it. And then lastly, if you have a minute, leave a review. It genuinely helps more people find this community, and that is the whole point. So thank you again for being here. Thank you, Adrian, for showing up.
My pleasure.
Again, we hope to have you back again soon. And we'll talk to all of you next week. Take good care of yourself.